got DJ Klyph. It's another episode of the Klyph Notes podcast. And this one's cool, man. It's one that we were working on for a while and finally got a chance to connect, man. And it's crazy because in this whole pandemic situation, it's actually the first live episode of the Klyph Notes podcast that I've done since COVID-19 jumped off. But I had a chance to visit a spot in person, to sit down for this interview with this cat who's been just like really supporting everything that I've been doing with DJ Klyph Productions. It's dope. I had a chance to have him rock at Mic Check as well. Big Wyno of Rated Ill Records is my guest on this episode of the Klyph Notes podcast, and he's got a really cool story, man, and it was cool to be able to sit down and chop it up and capture it and share hopefully some things that you didn't know about his journey, the things that he's done. But yeah, just excited to share this episode of the Klyph Notes podcast with you. So check it out, man. You know it's available everywhere you listen to your podcast. So tap in, sit back, and get ready for this interview with the homie, Big Wyno, the Klyph Notes podcast. Support for the Klyph Notes podcast comes from Akepele Apparel, an idea born from a love of hip-hop, funk, and soul music and its surrounding cultures. With fashion being a huge visual part of the cultures, they've created expressive images to pay homage, invoke nostalgia, and showcase the elements that make up the lifestyle and cultures of these genres. Akepele, apparel for the music lifestyle. For more information, check out akepele.com. That's AKEPELE.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, the show you're about to listen to may contain explicit content. So guess what? You need to put them babies to sleep. This is for grown folks only. So we're not held liable for anything you might be offended by. Thank you for listening.
Yes, yeah. Welcome back to another episode of the Klyph Notes podcast. You got DJ Klyph. Man, we live on location. It's kind of crazy. This is the first episode that I've done since COVID-19. The first episode of the Klyph Notes podcast live and in person, which is it's a little surreal, man. It's kind of crazy to be outside of the confines of the home space, you know what I'm saying, the home studio. But man, we out here doing our thing. And it's really cool to be able to have this conversation with this cat. In a very short time, man, we've been building, which has been cool, and to have an opportunity to hear you share your story with me, a little bit on the Welcome to the Neighborhood radio show, just like in conversations that we've had, but just excited to really kind of get into it and share it with the audience, man. But go ahead and introduce yourself, man.
Hey, this is Big Wyno with Rated Ill Records. And it's a huge honor of mine to be just a guest on this show. I listened to like nearly every episode. There's so many of them. I haven't got to the very end yet, but yeah. I listened to every one of these things. So to be on it, that's a surreal moment for me. And then, to be here doing it is even more surreal because, it's crazy. It's to be live doing it. It's interesting.
That's what's up. Yeah. So let everybody know where we're at, bro. Because like I said, man, this is the first episode that I'm doing on location since the jump off.
Yeah, so we're at Forever Tattoo Shop in Vancouver, Washington, 8600 Mill Plain Boulevard, at my homie Andy Pena's shop. He's been doing this thing for years. Good friend of mine. We grew up. He's kind of like my DJ OG1. You know what I mean? Brother from another mother. You know.
Word.
And yeah, he was kind enough to let us use his space, and man, I'm just really grateful. I'm really grateful for it. And he's always been a supporter of the scene, and he sponsored tons of events. He sponsored me tons of times. So I just got a lot of love for him, and I'm glad that we're able to kind of do this here of all places for me, because it's like it brings me back home basically.
Yeah, that's what's up, B. Just for everybody who's out there wondering, we are definitely social distancing. I see you rocking the merch mask.
Oh yeah,
which is dope, man.
We got the Rated Ill mask. It's still getting used to it. Everything, wearing the mask so much, but it's nice, man. It's good to have the merch, and this is the first mask that we've tried out to do.
Yeah.
And they're doing good. But I think we're going to make them a little bit more bright, a little bit more colorful the next time around. But just for the first run, this is nice.
Yeah, no doubt. So I had an opportunity to meet you for the first time at a meeting of the, man, at one point it was called Meeting of the Minds.
Yeah.
That's what it started as. And shout out to DJ OG1, who you've mentioned, who everybody on the Klyph Notes knows. He had this idea and this concept of really bringing the scene together to try to figure out kind of what's next.
Yeah.
And I had this idea of, a similar concept, trying to build, because what I do at the radio show has expanded now beyond being able to help and support and provide platform for local artists, and been, building with people outside of the region. And I thought, man, I mean, what a great way. Like, if we could build something so people from outside of Portland could say, okay, well, like, how can we further connect? And at any rate, man, we came together with sort of a similar idea. And shout out to Cool Nuts, who works for iHeart, was kind enough to help provide a space.
Yeah.
And Meeting of the Minds has now grown into the collective. But at any rate, that's where you and I first met. I had a chance to meet you.
Yeah.
I had a chance to meet your wonderful wife, Lee Goddess. And like, from jump, bro, you have been, it's just been really cool to see the passion that you have, not only for what you do, for your brand, but for like the support that you provide for the community.
Yeah.
So I guess off top, man, can we talk about where like what drives you to do more than just promote Big Wyno?
To be honest, the core root of it is very simple. I always thought it was corny for people to just promote themselves and nothing else, and expect everyone to support them when they never gave anything back. And I've been blessed to be in many different cities. I grew up out here as a teenager. I was born in San Diego, so I got to see that scene. I went to school out in Colorado in the Four Corner region, so I got to watch those scenes and help those scenes develop. And the one thing that I always have noticed about anyone who leaves an impact, it's always the guy who's willing to put himself out there for you. Like, I remember people in Colorado to this day, like Dent and Black Pegasus. And the reason I remember them is because they were always putting themselves out there. And as I started learning even deeper, like, you start learning about business once you get into music, right? So it starts as fun, and then you want to take it serious. And in business, just the networking it's a very simple, basic principle. You give before you ask. You know what I'm saying? And I would never expect anyone to support anything I do if I wasn't willing to give them something in return. And it's for me, it's about investing in an emotional bank account with people. And I'm always going to be genuine about it. If I'm not a fan of what you do, I'm still going to be cool with you, but we may not work together in that capacity, but I'm still going to support it if it's something that I believe in and that, that I'm about. And before, I used to blindly support things, and I learned my lesson with that too, because right now I'm just trying to support people who have similar principles and morals and ethics. And before, I was looking for more of the money and the fame and the stardom, right? So I went through this shift, a paradigm shift, if you will, of thought process between when I was out for myself. As successful as I was never happy with what I put out because I was too invested in other people's, like, what are they going to think about this? How are they going to feel about this song? We're going to write a song for this sponsorship or for whatever, but it wasn't like a natural thing. It wasn't really who I am. And I was doing it for the wrong reasons. And then when I started sitting back and going, you know what? I started as a fan of hip hop first. I didn't start like I wanted to be this crazy rapper or nothing like that. I was listening to artists that I liked, and I was like, yo, this dude's tight. And I was in the front row, excited to be like watching Atmosphere or Sage Francis, or, you know what I mean? Like all of these cats that really made an impact. And I was like listening to mixtapes of Big Pun and Fat Joe and DJ Quick and Dr. Dre and all these cats. And I'm like, man, I was a fan of these guys so much as a kid that I was like, man, I need to get back to that place. And it took me a long time to get back to that place because, you know, I had an ego. My ego was out of control. And especially when you start getting some success, you know, you start running a region, you start like doing things, you start getting on radio, you like, you know, you got fans, you got merch, you got people following you from Hollywood to Colorado. Like, you know, I had the whole Western United States like as pretty much my playground at one point. And the last event that we did, Skillfest, as a team, you know, there's 20,000 people there, sponsored by Coca-Cola, like, you know, Red Bull throwing money at us, like Coca-Cola throwing money at us. So my ego was just not in check at that point.
Yeah.
And because of that, I went through this real down period at the highest level that I ever made it to.
Yeah.
And I found out it was because my happiness is in like showing love to people.
Right.
So now that's all I want to do. Yeah. All I want to do is show love to people. And I know it throws people off. It throws people off a lot. They're just like, who is this dude? Like, why is he like sharing my shit? Mm-hmm, I'm like, fool, because you're tight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And it takes them a while to warm up. But once they realize, you know, that's the character, that's the type of lifestyle that I want to live, you know, and they realize it's not like a gimmick or I'm not trying to use people for nothing. I feel like they start warming up to it, you know, but it does take a while for them to really understand that it's real, you know?
Yeah. Especially in this genre, man, you know, where for the most part, what we see is people are sort of out for self, to see someone who is willing to, and for me, it's different. Right. And I remember I was having a conversation with Nuts, like a private conversation, like not even on air or anything. And I was just mentioning to him wanting to be mindful of what I do. You know what I'm saying? I just want to be mindful of how I operate and play. You know, if people are going to feel some kind of way about the artist that I play if I didn't play their song, whatever. And he's like, the difference between what he does as a radio host and what I do as a radio host is that I'm not a threat to anybody.
Right.
Because I'm not an artist.
Yeah.
So I can go in and say, hey, you know, how can I support what you're doing? How can I? And people look at it and they'd be like, well, you're just a radio DJ. Absolutely. I mean, that's what I want you to do. Whereas if you're an artist and you have that approach, people are like, and what's the side game?
Yeah.
You know, and like, what's in it for you?
Right.
So I can imagine that would be to a certain degree, maybe challenging to have to overcome that.
Yeah.
But I think as a people, as human beings, I think we need to do more of that, right?
Yeah.
Look outside of self and how can I be better for my community? So I say that to say I recognize that. Yeah. And hopefully can express in some way how much I want to, for lack of a better term, praise you for doing that, for taking that approach, because I know how draining that can be to a certain degree. But again, I think that's what we as a people, not just as a hip hop community, but just as human beings, that's what we should do to treat one another that way. You've talked about it publicly, not in any way to glorify it at all, right? But your journey, has been crazy. Yeah, it's been really, really crazy. Yeah. You spent some time as a guest of the state. Yeah. And you talked to me about how that sort of changed your perspective. On life and coming through that, and how that is been something that you can tap into as you're a creative now. If looking back, if there's one thing that you can look at and say, man, that situation, that time gave me this lesson, and this is something that I can always hold on to make sure it keeps me focused on the path. What would be like the primary thing? So, and I feel like we have a big audience of prison wives and prison families that be due to this, due to my time that I spent in prison. And I think the biggest thing that I learned is because when I went in, I had a lot of friends, right? Like we were getting courted by Arista Records at the time. We had an A&R, like they were basically paying our rent in Hollywood at the time, when all of this happened. And then I had, you have all these like followers and friends and people in the industry that are all about you. As soon as those doors shut and I was locked in, it was like crickets. And I was very surprised by the people who actually stayed in touch. The few people who did stay in touch, the handful of people that did stay in touch,
amazed me, because I was like, out of all the people that I didn't give enough time to, these are the ones who are holding me down right now.
Yeah.
And so the one thing I think that I take away from it the most is for one, I never waste a day. I never waste a minute in my day. And two, I always show the people around me it gives me more reason to show love to people, because and at the end of the day, when you're in a situation like that, it's like being death. It's like being dead. You know what I mean? Like, you go through the 5 stages of death when you lose someone, and like the first one's denial, and then it goes into acceptance, right? And the final is acceptance. And when you come to accept your fate in that, all you have is whoever is left there. So I realized that I didn't have I had a lot of superficial relationships and not a lot of like solid ones. And from that day on, I was like, all right, I'm only going to invest time to make real relationships, like to show real love. And I'm not going to hesitate to show love anymore. I'm not going to hesitate to be a fountain, as opposed to a drain. You know what I mean? I want to be a fountain and not a drain on people. And T says that all the time. She used that terminology. I got that from her. And so that's the one major thing is love, showing people super, super hardcore love, because you never know what you're going to, like, we're in the COVID thing right now. People are like the social, like, justice situation going on. Like, I didn't even know that this was going to happen. No one knew this was going to happen. Right. So in a situation like this, it just reinforces those feelings for me, because, I got people on both sides of the issue, and we have discussions, and if all I do is look at their social media feed, I would think that this guy's a maniac. He's an asshole. Like, this fool is on some racist shit. And then on the other side, I'd probably think, what the hell is this dude's problem? Like, if I was looking at the other side, I'm like, man, these fools are actually on some really reckless shit too. Yeah. But when you actually talk to these people, because you actually have love for them, so you have that conversation, I realize that most of us are actually in the middle together, feeling the same ways, but with a few differences that aren't so big that we can't overcome them together, Yeah. And without that love, I wouldn't see that at all. I wouldn't even have the ability to see that, because I'd just be like, oh, you're on that side? Well, fuck you. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. If you're on that side, well, fuck you. Like, if you're not in this lane, then I'm not about you at all. Yeah. But I think because now I really value my relationships a lot more, I take the time to see people's point of view and perspective a lot deeper, and have empathy for people's like past and what they've gone through and why they see the world that way, because I feel like education is more important than just like condemnation, Yeah,
100%, B. You've spoken out through your art, through your music, through the platforms that you've had, mm-hmm. And spoken out to, specifically when we think about the stand for justice. Mm-hmm. Have you gotten any pushback for publicly taking a stand?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, I lose followers. There's a lot of people who just like I said, they're gonna see it from that one side. You know what I mean? And I don't argue emotionally. You know what I'm saying? I don't make a point with emotions, because I understand that as emotional people, we can let our emotions run away, but emotions are fleeting, right? It's like being in a marriage. Yeah. Like, when you first fall in love, that actually, like, if the brain chemistry of being in love is kind of close to insanity, right? But it's after you are out of that new love stage that the real work happens. The real love happens, because you got to work on the problems. You got to work on the issues. And that's where the love is. You know what I'm saying? The years and years later, after that initial just like, insanity of being in love. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like it's the same thing with people now. They're thinking so emotionally that they can't see the stats that their side has come up with. Yeah. So whether you're on the left side of the issue or the right side of the issue, the numbers are actually more conservative. So if you break it down by numbers, then there's no argument, because the stats don't lie. Yeah. And the stats actually do lie, but in the favor of the people who are who you're fighting for. You know what I mean? So it's even by the numbers that you believe in, mm-hmm. Those are diminished numbers. Those are conservative numbers, But So yeah, I just try to give people education, because I feel like if I tell them, oh, you're wrong, you're stupid, you're dumb, I'm not going to get nowhere with anyone if I really want to make a change.
Right.
You know?
No doubt. Chatting with the homie Big Wyno. So we're recording this on the 21st of August, and that's significant in that it's the second day of Portland Hip Hop Week.
Yeah.
Which is dope. Last year in 2019, the proclamation changed from Hip Hop Day to Hip Hop Week. So we have a whole week of events that are going on. I was honored and blessed to be able to kick off the week with Mic Check.
Oh yeah.
So we did Mic Check last night. Shout out to the Crystal Ballroom. Shout out to McMenamins for their continued support with all the venues that they've had for the Portland hip hop community. Shout out to the homie Jennifer in particular. And we did it from the Crystal Ballroom, which is just dope.
Yeah.
You rocked the set.
Yeah.
The Duchess rocked the set. We had
Grand National XL.
National, man. They just released just an amazing project. And so they had their first live performance that was a part of the event. And you can check out the performances from the Crystal Ballroom. They're up right now on DJ OG1's Facebook page, on his Twitch. So you get an opportunity to see, I think maybe on his YouTube, I'm not sure, but you get an opportunity to see your set and the Duchess set. On the Mic Check YouTube page, you can check out the Grand National performance. I saw that they actually showed it live on the side of a building down in the Bay last night, which is dope. But I bring that up to say, man, first, thank you.
Yeah. Thank
you for rocking, B. You know what I'm saying? During your set, it was cool because you said it at the top that you were going to take us on a journey, and you did.
Yeah.
And you took us on this journey sort of through music, through your experience, like the experiences that you've had in life. So again, it's a example of how you use your art to reach people.
Yeah.
You talked about your time in prison.
Yeah.
One of the things that you shared with me though was something that you talked about in one of the songs that you did. And it may have even been one of in the midst of the songs when you talked about being in prison and seeing a lot of what we celebrate. I don't even know how to say it because we're not really free, but by not being in prison, the things that we celebrate, you got to see sort of the behind the scenes, and you talked about a couple specific brands that we celebrate, and how that sort of changed your perspective. Yeah, can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I talk about prison because I feel like it has everything to do with things like Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. So, and then there's several others like Tamir Rice and like all of these other cats that have been victims of police brutality. Yeah. So in order to like answer that question, I take it to the root, right? I feel like it's a cycle. So the cops follow the laws of the land. The laws of the land are based on the Constitution. The Constitution dictates where these laws come from, because if they're outside of the Constitution, they won't pass as laws in your state. The laws in the state will determine who goes to prison and how they get there. And it also determines how long they stay. So in the Clinton administration, he signed the Tough on Crime Act. And he did that to placate the left and the right. He wanted to look tough on crime so that the Republicans would be with him. And he also wanted to pass a bill that, everyone could kind of agree with. During the 90s, the gang epidemic was huge. And so there was a different, he did the 3 strikes out, you're outlaw, like all of these things happened then, but it also created what's called the prison industrial complex. So from the 70s to now, our prison population has I think it's up like 400 or 500%, something like that. It's insane. But the reason is because there's more laws, right? And then what happened is the businesses got involved with these prisons. So each prison is run like its own individual state. And the warden is considered basically the governor of each prison. So in places like California and Texas, they've done things. They've done experiments in their prisons. Texas is the most notable place that they've done this. In Texas, they had prisons that were 100% rehabilitation centers. And then they had, in the same state of Texas, basically what they call warehousing inmates, right? Where they would just work and be warehoused. They did an experiment and found out that the recidivism rate for the people that were in the rehab one, where they take care of the inmates psychologically and physically, and they take care of the whole problem, the recidivism rate went down by 60%. So like you're getting a 40% recidivism rate out of that. And that was just in the 70s, 80s, you know what I mean? But on the other side, the warehousing, although the recidivism rate was huge, like everyone was coming back, the financial gain was huge as well. So these prisons were making money. And how that works is, in the Constitution, the 13th Amendment, which I'm sure a lot of people I know are already familiar with it, but in the 13th Amendment, it states that slavery is illegal except for in the case of when a person, and this I'm paraphrasing, but when a person commits a crime, then they could be used as basically slave labor. They created that law so that when they freed the slaves back in the days, the South and the North still had reasons and abilities to keep the slaves locked up and to keep them working for financial gain. That's the only reason for the law. That's the only reason the law exists. So it was basically like, yeah, we're going to give you your freedom. But it was also a backhanded slap, because if you break a law, like looking at a white lady or drinking from the white water fountain or whatever they're going to charge you with today, they're going to put you in prison, and then we're going to have free slave labor again. And so that was abused heavily, and it continues to this day. So the abuse continues to this day because in the prisons, and I can attest to this because I was in those prisons, a lot of them, they have what they call prison industries, where there was one, there was like a medical one where they use 3D printers to create casts and 3D casts and all these things like medical supplies. But how the bidding works is Nike or Verizon or AT&T or, Charmin or whoever, they'll come to the prison and they'll be like, hey, we want to use your prison industries. The prison's like, well, you got to bid on it because we got a line out the door for our prison. And so they're like, okay, they bid on it. And then this is the raw deal of it, which sucks crazy to me, is so then they get the contract. Say Nike gets the contract, which they've gotten many contracts. So Nike gets the contract. So the inmate workers are making Nike products now. The inmate workers are getting paid $1 or less per day for only 20 days out of the 30 days a week or a month that exist. So they're making more than the 67 to 87 cents a day that they would normally make for any other prison job. Because basically the inmates, they run the prison. There's more inmates than there are workers. So we have to take care of the prison. And so when there's the prison industries come in, now we're making products, commercial products. So we get a little bit more money. So you get $1 a day instead of the 87 or 67 cents. And it varies from state to state. So then that product goes out, and that you paid the worker $1 a day and whatever in materials, right? So say a Nike shoe like a Cortez costs $5 to make, and that's overestimating. They sell it for $50. They make $45 off of that thing. And then the prison is getting paid for it because they're contracting out the workers. And so Nike paid the prison for that, for the work at a huge discount, because they don't have to worry about the workers' rights. They don't have to worry about the workers' medical, anything to do with any normal worker. They don't have to worry because we're wards of the state at that point. But the taxpayer pays for it. So you as a taxpayer are paying for Nike workers to be housed and to be there. And you're reaping none of the rewards of the billions of dollars that these companies are making as a taxpayer. You're just paying more taxes. Mm-hmm. So then, and then on top of that, they have to, in order to keep those prison industries going, you need more prisoners. You need more people getting locked up for longer periods of time. And the people who suffer most from that are blacks and Latinos. So like the stat that I was sharing yesterday, between the ages of 18 and 30, 1 in 3 black men are in prison right now as we speak, and will be throughout their entire lifetime. That's happened for years now. 1 in 6 Latinos between the ages of 18 and 30 are in prison right now. And I use the blacks and Latinos because there's a huge number. But there's an equal number of whites in prison too. I mean, not equal, but it's still like 1 in 12 for Caucasian Americans being in prison, because they need to put people in there. So when I talk about like the social justice and all the social reform, I ask people, I get that you're passionate about it. I get all these people are passionate about it. And a lot of these new cats are like, all of a sudden they're woke. Some of them are chasing clout. So they're at these protests, chasing clout and performing and doing whatever. But the reality of it is a lot of people don't know what it means, what you're going to have to give up to really stand for this fight. Because you're at the protest wearing the Nikes that shit you're fighting against is all about. And then you have companies like Nike's a good example, because on one hand, they're like standing with Colin Kaepernick while inmates are making their stuff, or they've got slave laborers in the American islands, and like, you know what I mean? Like Samoans and all these cats are getting, like, in some of these island countries, they're actually like locked up in prisons where they have to like ask to get pregnant and have dates. So in America, it's bad because it's in prison. But I mean, some of these companies go into other countries and just decimate their populations. And the prison industrial complex is something that we actually are importing to other countries now. Australia has the private prison system. They're learning from us. And who do you think is the one who's most affected by that? The Aboriginals that live in Australia, because they're getting locked up at a rate 10 times more than anyone else in those countries. You know, so I just ask people, like, if you're going to be about the protest, don't just be about the bullshit, the anarchy and, you know, whatever, just fighting the cops. I get it. It's cool to rebel. It feels good or whatever. But at the end of the day, none of that's going to matter if you continue to buy these products. If you continue to give the money to the people paying for the lobbyists to make the laws to lock you up. Don't make no sense to me. But at the same time, like, you know, how can it make sense to anyone? They try to hide all that, you know?
Yeah, and it's tough because I think that it can become overwhelming. Oof. Because we're living our lives, and there's so much stuff that we're ignorant to. And then when you begin to become aware, it's so much so quickly.
Yeah.
Shout out to the homie Libretto. I mean, he shared some stuff with me, and I can remember sitting and talking to Libretto. We probably talked for at this one particular occasion. I'm thinking we were probably sitting and chopping it up for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and like an hour in, bro, like my eyes started almost glazing over because it's so much information.
Yeah.
And it's not like, I mean, it's real, it's facts, right? Mm-hmm. But we live lives, again, I'm holding up the quote signs. We live these lives of freedom, being able to do things. And yes, if you compare what I can do when I leave here compared to someone in another place, okay, yeah, maybe I'm not, maybe I am able to move to a certain degree, but you know, man, I'm talking to my neighbor the other day, and he's talking about in the town in which I live, you know, they're going to be doing a rally there, and so people in the town are saying, okay, well, let them come. I'm just going to get my gun, and I'm talking to him, and I'm saying, is that really the way we should be thinking?
Right.
Like, don't you see what's happened? We're being inundated with all this one-sided information,
right? And
that one-sided information makes us think a certain kind of way, and because I think that certain kind of way, I stop thinking about the next man as a human being. Right. I'm so concerned about self. So I say all that to say I think it's powerful that you're, again, using these platforms to educate people, to share information, understanding that maybe I don't get it this time, but the more I hear it, just like my favorite song or just like my favorite television show that I watch over and over again, the more I hear this information, the more impact it can have on me. And then I'm not just reacting to what I see the next man doing. I'm making a choice about how I want to move because now I see, oh, this is how we can actually make change. Right. One of the other things that you've talked about, and you mentioned it a bit ago, is providing resources or care or information for prison wives. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about what you're doing with that?
Yeah. So me and my wife, Lee Goddess, we have a podcast called Super Wide, and then we have an organization called Super Wide, and our main point for that is a lot of inmates aren't like me, right? They don't, and like this business owner here, you know what I'm saying? They don't get out and create something positive. A lot of them go back. I have a lot of friends that are you know, still inside. So what we try to do is inform the community out here, and the people most affected. If you got to think about it, we have, you know, 5% of the world's population in America, 25% of the world's inmates. So that means every inmate has someone who loves them, whether it's a mom and a dad or a wife or a sister or whatever, girlfriends. So we try to hit those guys up because they're directly affected. Like you said, right? If it's not directly affecting you, it's hard to really see it, you know? And that's why they keep prisons where they keep them, out of sight, out of mind. Because you're not going to care if an inmate dies. You're not even going to hear about it on the news. Like, So the people that do care about it are going to be those people directly affected. And so we're members of many of the prison online communities, and being a part of those communities, we hear the stories of like I get to, as a former inmate, get to hear about what these women are going through, trying to fight and support. Because if it wasn't, like, I was doing a life sentence, if it wasn't for my wife and my family, I would have still been in prison. I would have never got out, because I would have had no one fighting for me out here. And so, like, there's a lot of people in prison that I know still waiting to get out, because a quarter of the population they say there's about 2.5, 2.3 million people in prison, every day. Like, out of that 2.3 million, the statistical fact is 1/4 of those people are actually not guilty of the crime they're in there for. So that's a huge number, right? That's over 250,000 people, who are not guilty but still in prison, because we need to keep the machine running. It's an $8 billion business. And so we educate the prison wives on how to get their man out, and when they're coming up for parole, what to do, how to support them from out here. In this COVID era, it's even more difficult, because they're not getting visits. They're locking them down. They're dying in there of COVID right now. Like, because prison healthcare, like, it's like we live a prison punishment. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are like, well, why would we reform and educate these inmates when they're in prison? You know what I mean? Well, you do that because you don't want them getting out being inmates.
It's crazy, bro. A thought just came to me. I can remember talking to somebody I'm sure I was talking to them on my 9 to 5, and they were talking about how just feeling some kind of way that somebody could be in prison and they could get their degree while they're in prison, and how that's, they just felt that's not right. And I'm thinking, how ignorant is that?
But that's the consensus. People are like, why do I got to pay for my, education and these guys don't? But here's the stats on it. Inmate who gets a GED in prison has a 40% less recidivism rate to recommit a crime. An inmate who gets up to a doctorate has a 0% recidivism rate. If you turn an inmate give him a doctorate, he will never come back to prison again. That's what that stat says. If he earns his bachelor's degree while in prison, he has like a 5% recidivism possibility. You know what I mean? So the difference is a lot of the people are in prison because, for one, they live in neighborhoods where they're undereducated. A lot of them can't read, or they have mental health issues. And since we've closed down like the insane asylums, quote unquote, they stick them in prison. Right. And that only exacerbates their mental health issues. So a lot of people are thinking like, oh, the worst of the worst are in prison. Nah, the saddest of the saddest are in prison. The least educated, the poorest people who can't fight the system. And then you have just people who are just hurting like in different ways. And you put them in prison and then you let them out. And all you've done is created a monster. It's like, and here's the thing about it. If you rehabilitate these guys, because the rehabilitation that goes on now is a joke. It's underfunded. It doesn't exist. If you start funding these programs and you start turning these places into areas where people can get psychological help for themselves, they can start studying, they can reform out of it. You're going to have like the crime rate as it is already 30% down from like the 90s. You know what I mean? So although in the media, it's like crime rate's going up. No, it's not. It hasn't been going up for years. It's going down, but the inmate population keeps going up. Yeah. So we have to ask ourselves, why are we locking people up if people aren't committing if it's not like that serious anymore? And I always tell people, follow the money. You know what I mean? Because people don't care. Like, even if you're going to be selfish, like, do you really want your tax dollars going to that guy? Because one way or another, your money's going to that person. You're spending over $100 million or $100,000 a year per inmate, and then you're locking them up longer. So you got an inmate who goes in. I have a friend. His name's Ryan. He was on the phone with all the homies last night at the show, right? Yeah. So Ryan went into prison when he was 17 years old, right? He's 30 years old now. He's not going to get out for another 9 years. Every single year, the taxpayers have paid $100,000 for this guy to be in prison. He was rehabbed, probably could have rehabbed himself within 5 to 9 years, right? And that's an extension. I'm just saying if he wasn't trying, right? Yeah. So would you rather spend that money, or would you rather educate the 17-year-old kid that went into prison? You know what I'm saying? Get him an education so that when he gets out, he never goes back again, and he becomes something of a commodity to your community, because he's going to be your neighbor. You know what I'm saying? He's going to live right next door to you. You know what I mean? There's like, it doesn't matter how many HOAs you put around yourself. It doesn't matter how you try to guard yourself. There are so many felons in America, a quarter of the population. You know what I mean? Like, think about it. Like, 2.5 million every year. Do the math on that compared to what you're surrounded by felons every day. You know what I mean? 1 in 10 people around you is a felon. So do you want them scheming on you? Because that's what they learn in there. Or do you want them to actually help you become a better person by helping the community become a better community? You know what I mean?
No doubt. Chopping up with the homie Big Wyno. So if folk are hearing this and they're thinking, man, that all sounds dope. That all sounds amazing. I want to know more information about those programs that you're doing, or how can I be involved? How can I support it? Where would you send them?
I would say you can come to us directly. We're working with John Legend. He has a organization called Free America, and we work directly with his organization. And it's to end mass incarceration, like all the things that we've been talking about. John Legend's been helping out for like the last 2 years now. He's been at the forefront of it, a huge voice, sharing stats and all that. So Free America is like one of the main platforms that nonprofits that we support and that we're about and that we work with. And then you can come see us anytime at Big Wyno, BIGWYNO, RadioDealRecords.com. Yeah, all of that. So we're not hard to find. It's Rated Ill or it's Big Wyno. Google it. You're going to find it. You're going to run into us. You know what I mean?
That's what's up, man. Well, kudos for you, man, for what you're doing. Like I said, I think it's dope to see you to utilize these platforms for things like that, making a difference.
Yeah.
As an artist, you've done a lot, you know, and it's been interesting to again to get to know you, to learn all that you've done. You gave me the opportunity to feature one of the latest joints that you released, Angels, that you did with Killer Priest.
Yeah.
Which is so dope.
Right.
From a music standpoint, like what's happening now with Rated O Records, with Big Wyno, with Lee Goddess.
So right now we call it Rated O Records, but I was listening to your guys' interview with Grand National XL, right? Like that interview did. It's very similar, right? We're a bunch of cats, and we call it a record, like Rated O Records, because I had to have an LLC. We had to like create a business out of it. Yeah. But really, we're a team, and we have a crew from LA, Colorado, like Denver, the Four Corner region, like every major city in the Four Corners, San Diego, LA, Portland, Southern Oregon, out here even, you know, in Vancouver. So like our team is built of just creatives. So as much of a record label as it is, it's also a media, like we're a media center. We have artists of all kinds, graffiti artists, tattoo artists, like muralists, everything you could think of. And then music producers and MCs and DJs that we rock with. So in the music front right now, we're kind of like, we're building the Northwest scene. That's like my main goal out here is to be the representative for Rated Ill in the Northwest. I just recently became a member of the collective. And so with that, we're trying to just enhance the hip hop community here. I have an album with Killer Priest coming out. That was the single Angels, which is doing really well. So I'm super happy because I was actually really nervous it wasn't going to do well.
Yeah.
And so I'm surprised that it's, you know, I was like, okay, if we can get like 5,000 plays or something, I'm going to be happy. So when it started taking off, I was like, man, this can be a thing. Yeah. And shout out to Killer Priest. That's like my brother. I love him. Yeah. It was just his birthday on the 16th. So shout him out if you haven't seen or heard of Killer Priest. He's from the Wu-Tang Clan fam. And I met him through Ghostface. So like my whole connection with the Wu-Tang, I love those guys. They're a really good team. And it's been an honor to like learn from them. Yeah. And then to really connect with them and do music with them and do shows with them. I can't wait till we could do it again. And then we're working on some potential things with Fat Joe right now. And then what else are we doing, man? There's so much. I got some stuff with Mellow Man Ace coming out. So here's my thing. A lot of people are like, why are you dealing with all of these older rappers from the 90s and 2000s? Well, I looked up to these dudes. So I have a bucket list that I wrote when I was in prison. And I was like, I'm going to do music with these dudes. And I wrote a whole list down of all the people, which Cool Nuts is on that list, by the way.
Word.
Cool Nuts is, because when I lived out here, dude, when I first was introduced to hip hop, it was through a radio station out here. And DJ Fresh had a show every Sunday. And he would play Cool Nuts and all these other local artists. And I was just like, man, I'm going to be like Cool Nuts. Like, I was like, I really like, it's funny because I've got to meet him now. But every time I meet him, I'm like, I can't say nothing. You know what I mean? Because he's part of the reason that I'm here, you know, that I do this. Yeah. But yeah, I have a bucket list, man, and I'm just checking it off, you know. So Mellow Man Ace was the first Latino MC to go platinum and use bilingual language in a song. Yeah. He's also the brother of Sen Dog and created Cypress Hill. So I was hyped to get to work with him, and in the future we got some newer cats that we're coming out with. And yeah, man. And then really, to be honest, I actually have a new bucket list because like my goal now is to work with every Portland artist that I can. Yeah. Like if you notice, like I haven't put out a single by myself without a feature on it for a minute because, and I don't even call them features. I call them collaborations because I split everything 50-50. Like our business model is it's an equal business model. I split with the producer and the MCs that I'm on there. If there's 4 of us on a track, then it's getting split 25 ways with the royalties. And that's just the way I've been doing things. And it's been really working out for me. So yeah, man. And the thing is like, you know, this COVID is super inconvenient. I get it, you know, especially for the live shows. But when it comes to connecting with people and being able to like meet with them artistically, I kind of feel like I'm at a weird high right now, you know? So it's been doing well.
We talked about it before I turned the microphones on, man, for all the challenges that have come from COVID. You know, what I see in my 9 to 5, the way that it's impacted the healthcare industry. As you mentioned, there are some positives that have come from this. And one of them is it does give you an opportunity to have real conversations. Like we used to joke, it's kind of crazy. We would see one another if we were out at a show or something like that, and then, oh yeah, I'm gonna see you at the show, and we're gonna have a quote unquote conversation while the music's blaring and the DJ's playing and the performers are performing. Well, now you don't have that. You don't have that same obstacle of like I can barely hear what you're saying. So it does give us time. The other thing that's come out of it that I've seen in the stuff that I personally do with DJ Klyph Productions is it also gives you an opportunity it forces you to find another way to be creative. So I want to reach my audience and I can't reach out and touch them. Yeah. So what are you going to do? Right. And so now we see so many ways that we're using the virtual world to build audiences, not just maintain this connection. And I think that, you know, if we ever do get a handle on the pandemic, and venues open up again and people can start getting on stages, my hope is that those who really took advantage of this time, that it does nothing but enhance what they do in terms of sharing their art with their audiences. So, you know, it's going to be interesting to see like who's really taking advantage of this time and who's not.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised at who I'm not hearing from. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, because like there's some careers that I was watching, especially here in Portland. Yeah. And I'm just like, man, where'd they go? You know what I'm saying? Where are they at now? Like, what happened? Because they just seem like they're on this huge trajectory. Yeah. And I was like, man, they're gonna make it. They're gonna break through. You know, we're sitting there rooting them on. You know. Right. And then all of a sudden it was like crickets, and for some of the artists, and then there's other artists that I'm just like, wow, where'd this guy come from? Yeah. And even like last night at Mic Check, it was a good example. I would have never done that set in a club or at a venue. Right. I would have never thought that I was, because I don't think I'm a big enough artist to pull a set like that off yet. Yeah. Especially when, you know, there's drinking and people kicking it, and you know, people were so trapped in the party. Yes. That I never really have done too much party music. I do it because I know I got live shows. Right. But my music is always so serious. So right now, it's a benefit to me because people are actually hearing it, listening to it, and it's like some of the songs that I'm putting out, like that people are listening to and that are catching on right now, I mean, those are like 2 years old, 3 years old, 10 years old.
Yeah.
You know, some of these songs I did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But like they're you know, these problems that we face today are the same problems that we've been facing forever. It's just people, like you said, they wanted to ignore it and they wanted to have the party.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And now the party's kind of like, you know, the party's over right now. And the lights are off and we got to deal with it. And some of us have already been through that. Some of us are already, I talked to OG1 about this the other day, and he's like, you know, we were talking about how we hope it can maintain the momentum past the streets and into the legislation, or past the streets and into something worthwhile. Mm-hmm. And that's why I commend people like Randall Wyatt for what he's doing, and I Am Jordan. You know, we got to honor him yesterday. Yeah. And like, dude, I love what these guys are doing, because you're seeing it in action, and in action in their communities. You know what I mean? Whereas like, cause my movement is more of like a national movement, right? And it doesn't pinpoint one area, but I feel like our area does need to be pinpointed. We're at the center of the media attention, you know, and with that attention comes a real responsibility. There comes a responsibility to act right in public. If you're protesting out there, you know, it's your responsibility to not throw a punch, no matter what. It's your responsibility to not look like the animal they're trying to make you look like. It's your responsibility to stand up for what's right in the right way with love, because that's what we're trying to promote. And if we're and these people, in my opinion, are doing that. They're taking what they have and they're turning the pain and hurt into love and an outpouring of it. And to me, that's amazing to me to even know people like that, you know? So it's dope.
That's what's up, man. Yeah, the scene here has been, it's really been cool to see it grow, just in the time that I've had an opportunity to be a part of it. But especially that, you know, I was talking to Jordan last night afterwards, and just commending him again for what he's done with hip hop, or what he is doing with hip hop fighting cancer, the connection that he's built with OHSU and their recognition of what he's doing, hip hop fighting injustice. I mean, this is a young man who had a vision, and just put it into play. And I think that oftentimes the thing that stands in our way is us, and not realizing the power that we have if we just are willing to use what we have. So I think, again, those are things to be celebrated and supported, because it's not easy. It's not easy to be on that road, where you're doing something that looks a little bit different, than what people expect. So, and then it's a responsibility, I feel like, of folk like myself who have these bigger media platforms to promote and share that. And so that's what we try to do. And then I think when we truly do that, when we truly put our energies into that, then something like the collective, that's where you can say, okay, now everybody is bringing, sort of like you talked about with Rated L,
right?
Everybody's bringing their gifts, and you're just that much bigger. You can make that much more of an impact.
And the collective, I'm super excited about the collective and where we're going with that, because you know, the people that I get to work with in the collective, they're dedicated to making it known that our community is about pushing something real and expressive and Portland. You know what I'm saying? Like, here's the thing I love about Portland hip hop. It doesn't have a definition, and it doesn't need one. We work outside of the definition of all things like mainstream. So the cool thing about it is, at this point, we're at the baby phases of our hip hop, even though we got OGs like Cool Nuts and OG1 and yourself. And there's some like Boston. I mean, Bosco, and like, there's so many amazing like people that I like in all of the hip hop world out here. And I feel like, even myself, we had to leave Portland to get the work that we needed. And now I don't feel like that's necessary anymore. And so this is a time right now where things like the Hip Hop Collective, I think, are going to start. You're going to see us really start creating and promoting platforms that that are detrimental to the growth of hip hop in our city in a way that I think is going to really define the Northwest as a whole. Cause you got Seattle and you even got like, the Bay Area, and we kind of always fall in the middle of that. You know what I mean? But Portland has this like unique, like perspective. And I feel like it's our job as a hip hop community to really just like shout that out right now, because all eyes are on us right now. This is the perfect time. This, and for instance, like one thing I love about this podcast is like a hip hop history book. If you need to know anything about Portland hip hop and the history of Portland hip hop, then this is the place to be. And that's why I was like, I would always bug you like, when am I getting on? Let me get on here. Klyph, what do I got to do to get on here? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be a part of that legacy. I want to be a part of this history. And I feel like once we all as a community start really understanding the effect of our resources, like this podcast, like Cool Nuts and Juma Black's breakout show, like OG1, when his projects and what he's doing. I know he's not on the radio with you guys anymore, but like all of these things that you guys do are directly for the benefit of everyone. So, and I know people have, everyone has something to say about everything. Like you were saying, like, what's in it for me? Like, who cares? Like, what are you going to make of it? You know what I mean? Like, for instance, if I'm the most selfish dude in the world and I got a radio show and you're allowed on it, or I got a platform where you're going to have listeners, who cares if I try to make everything about me? If you're invited on that platform, do something about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, man. I remember I was doing I don't know. I know I've said it on mic before. I don't know if we actually talked about it on mic, but I was doing an episode of the Klyph Notes podcast with Tope, who's a Portland artist who's now residing in the Bay, and he was saying he was listening to an episode, and he was thinking, man, it would be so dope if there was video, because I want to see that. I want to see that conversation, and then that conversation grew into even greater conversations, even with other folk, about the fact that it's cool to just be able to visualize and see these folk and see the history. Like I was just watching just yesterday, I think I was watching, there was a short YouTube clip of Eazy-E in the studio with Dre, and the story's been told. I know people who are fans of hip hop know that like Eazy was not a rapper.
Yeah,
he was literally, his ability to rap was created by Dre.
Yeah, so
to actually see video of Dre like rocking his hand to keep Eazy on beat and see Eazy flubbing lines and trying to figure it out, that's like, NWA is a significant part of hip hop history. So to be able to see that, I think is really cool. And I appreciate what you said, because some of my favorite episodes of the Klyph Notes podcast are episodes that I've had an opportunity to do with vets. Yeah. Episodes that I've done with Cool Nuts and Versatile and Jumbo. These people who came up in Portland, and we look at the Lifesavers and we look at the stuff that Nuts has done, and we see where they are now and what they're doing now, and we recognize what they did back then. And we hear these stories of what happened, what was going on in Portland pre-Lifesavers. Yeah. What was going on in Portland pre-Cool Nuts. Some of the names that I didn't even know, that I got educated on. Yeah. And I agree with you, man. So for me, selfishly, it's so dope to be a part of sharing this story. Yeah. The fact of the matter is, man, being a black man, it is my cultural history that's how we learn our history. Yeah. Is through telling these stories, right? I'm a man of science in my 9 to 5. Yeah. And we live in a society, we live in a prove it to me society, right? I've got to see evidence that sometimes the evidence is my life experience. Yeah. And when we're doing the best that we can as people, as human beings, then you can trust what I'm saying, right? My word is my bond. Right? Yeah. That is so powerful, because that's the one thing that we have lost, is we've lost our history. Yeah. We're so worried about, how am I going to make it to the next? you make it to the next by learning from what you and your ancestors did in the past.
Yeah.
You learn what's worked and what hasn't worked. You learn good from bad. And then you get to identify a lot of the stuff that we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah.
These things that seem to be behind the scenes. Sometimes you can just look at something and go, that just doesn't feel right. Why doesn't it feel right? Well, if I can refer to my history and I understand it doesn't feel right because it's not right, and I recognize that it's not right, and then I don't put energies into that.
Yeah.
And then that's how we grow. A little bit of a soapbox, but
No. It's funny, you know, that we get to talk about these other artists and these other people that are so impactful. You know what I mean? Because like KRS-One has this quote, right? And it's always impacted me because people are always like, I come from a Latino community, right? I know the Latino community of the Portland, Vancouver, like outskirt areas of this area because I live that culture, right? Yeah. But I grew up in a black foster home, right? Yeah. Like my foster parents were like these black foster parents from South Chester, Carolina. You know what I mean? Like, and everyone knew him and everyone loved him, you know? And like my foster dad was a bus driver. So I got around the city everywhere. I was all over. Yeah. And like, it's for me, like hip hop, what Karis once said is, you hear that I have a dream speech a lot, but nowhere else does it manifest but in hip hop. And if you've ever been to a b-boy battle, if you've ever been to an MC battle, if you've ever been to any type of cultural hip hop event, you're going to see Asians there. You're going to see black kids there. You're going to see Latino kids there. You're going to see white kids there. And the cool thing about that is the history of hip hop, like, is that it's always been multicultural. You know what I'm saying? It's never been one over the other. It was talent reigns supreme. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're a dope DJ, then you're going to, it doesn't matter what color you are because your skill talks for you. Nothing else does. If you're a dope b-boy, it's not going to matter what color you are. Some of the dopest b-boys I've seen out in this area have been Asian b-boys. You know what I'm saying? Some of the dopest graffiti writers I've seen have been white kids. Some of the dopest MCs I've seen have been black out here. You know what I'm saying? Some of the dopest, you know, like DJs I've seen, like, you know, have been everything, like from like Latino kids to black kids to like, you know what I mean? You see it all. But the one thing that you don't see is a division based on that race. And to me, that's why, like, when we talk about, like, bringing it back to the beginning of the conversation, when you talk about the society and what's going on with the social justice, hip hop is important because if you see things from the perspective of a hip hopper, then these things are not going to be the same. You're going to ask questions. You're going to challenge authority. You're going to not only challenge authority, you're going to accept mentorship, because in order to learn these things, you learn from the people that teach you. Like, I learned how to rap because I listened to Cool Nuts for hours on end. You know what I'm saying? I listened to Eazy-E and Dr. Dre and these cats hours on end. I memorized their music. You know what I'm saying? And then when I learned about the culture of hip hop, I was like, man, I want to do graffiti. I want to do this and that. So I had to learn from what I would consider the masters. And then I went out and I discovered who they were in my town, in my region, and like, for instance, there's this cat named Ming out here, this Asian dude. He's how I got into graffiti, because he would go bomb trains and he would do whole cars. And I'd be like, what is this amazing? This is crazy, right? Yeah. And that's how I learned it. I learned it because I was like, man, I had to sit under this guy who was like a master. And then I found someone like Solid Savage and like Haven AQ and like Presh. And I found these graffiti writers who were just like sick. And I would just sit with them and just draw. While they were drawing in their blackboard, I just sat and I watched. And that was how I learned, because that was a mentorship thing. And I feel like our generation, prior to the COVID lockdown, prior to this, the protests, we didn't want to hear nothing from nobody. Right. We didn't want to learn shit from anyone. Right. We could do it ourselves. We didn't need no one. We're all self-made. We're all this. We're all that. It was so indulgent on self that if anyone tried to teach you anything, you felt like you're getting punked. Right. Like, you know, you're dick riding all of a sudden. It's an issue. Right. And I feel like hopefully throughout this whole, you know, situation that's going on now, people will realize you're not being a bitch if you take the lead of an OG. They've created a platform where they got to this notch, and now you get to start from that notch and move up.
And not to cut you off,
go ahead.
I'm glad you said that, because as somebody who does have more life experience, that's what I want. Mm-hmm. Like, I I'm not going to do this forever.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? My hope is that when I leave the game, I leave it better than when I found it. But in order for that to happen, there has to be someone who sees the vision and who empowers themselves to be able to step into, right?
Yeah.
That's how we continue to keep the art form growing. The issue is if we don't do that, that's how the art form dies.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And I think we have to break down, and I think if you listen to the podcast, you've heard this from many OGs, right? It's the idea of, no, I do want to, you know, I am looking for opportunities, or I am willing to mentor other people. But I'm not going to chase you.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And and Star Child used to say it all the time. Like people when Star was alive, rest in peace, you know, people would look at Star as kind of this standoffish, do it for himself kind of cat. But Star was like, no, absolutely. If you come to me, I'm more than happy to share what I have, but just come at me right. Come at me with respect. If you come at me disrespectful, but that's no different than anything in life, right? You're not going to go to if you work a 9 to 5, you're not going to go to your boss or some kind of way, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Let's focus on what's really, really important. Man, at the end of the day, bro, all of this stuff, all of the music that we do, man, what really, really matters is how is it impacting lives? How is it changing lives?
Yeah.
And when we look at this art form, man, I know I'm going on another tangent.
No.
But we wonder, why is hip hop so different now than it was so many years ago? It goes back to money, B.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If I can go into this situation and I know if I go down this path, I can make a lot of money. It's not about the art.
Right.
Right. It's not at all about the art. And that's why we have the different lanes. You know, I think it's dope that there are different lanes. I was talking to someone earlier and they were asking me, yo, like, am I on to some of the New York, like, trap, whatever. And I was like, I have the wisdom now to understand I know my lane and I'm going to stay in my lane because I understand the value of supporting that.
Right.
Because I feel like that's the one thing that's constant. You mentioned it a minute ago, right? And I have to be careful how I say this just because of how I rock. Sure. Not to disparage anything that anybody else does. Right. But talent always rises to the top. Yeah. And if I listen to an artist who's hot, who's getting played on every commercial radio station, who, boy, I saw them on a Sprite commercial or whatever the case may be, and I listen to the MC or the DJ who's really got skills, who really, when I look at that, I say that's the art form of hip hop, like that's the foundation. There is an obvious difference. Sure. And when you get 15, 20 years down the road, that cat who was on the Sprite commercial, maybe now they're doing movies and they're doing television shows and they're living in a big house and they're doing their thing and they're not at all about hip hop anymore. Right. They're about entertainment and there's nothing wrong with that. Sure. But if that's what you want to do, say that. Right. But if you're about hip hop, if you're about peace, love, unity, and having fun, that's a whole different situation. Yeah. So I say all that to say, I think we got to stop. We, myself included, I think we can't let the outside dictate how we on the inside move. We can't let the outside say that there is a separation of old school, new school. We have to say, no, we're about the art form, and yes, let me do everything that I can as long as I can, so that when I die off, the next one who comes up, they don't have to fight those same battles. Yeah. Right. They can continue this journey on in a very positive way. Sorry, another tangent.
No, that's it. Dude, I was listening to this singer talk the other day in a podcast, and she said something that hit me. She was like, if I want to die a singer, if I wanted to die an actress or someone who did some other side thing, then I would chase that. But I want to do this. This is what I want to do. If you're about the money, then you're going to chase that. And there's going to be a clear definition of who you are because of it. Yeah. But just don't say that you're hip hop then. That's how I look at it. I'm like, don't tell me you're hip hop because you rap. Right. You're not like, you're not hip hop just because you rap. Right. You just rap. Right. That's cool. Right. It's cool that you rap. You might be a great rapper. Right. But you have no idea what hip hop is. And I get passionate about that, right? Like, cause I embody hip hop. Like, no one could tell me that I'm not. You know what I mean? There's nothing anyone could say, like, to the point where, because I was going for the commercial success. I did plan on that trajectory. Right. But going all the way back to the beginning of the first question that you asked me, like, how are you able to show love to people in the way that you are? It's because I know that at the end of the day, like, no one can tell me they're going to out-rap me. You know what I'm saying? No one has the catalog. I haven't met anyone with the catalog that I have in my generation yet. You know what I'm saying? I haven't met anyone who kept it hip hop the whole time, like, who's paid respect to all of the greats. Like, I've done, my first feature was with KRS-One. So, like, I've taken it from the foundation and brought it here, and hip hop's only 40 years old. You know what I'm saying? Right. So if people want to, like, be about hip hop, then cool. If they want to be about rap, it's cool too.
Right.
But at the same time, like, I'm content in my lane, like you were saying. Like, I love hip hop. That doesn't mean I don't like all the other stuff. I like mainstream rap too.
Yeah, 100%.
But, like, I just don't like the business part of how they do business. I do business with my friends, and so I treat them like friends. Yeah. I don't stab my friends in the back over contracts. I'm like, if it's not a win-win situation for both of us, then I'll walk away from it no matter how big the situation is. Right. And you could ask Coca-Cola and Red Bull about that. Yeah. I will walk away from a dollar amount if we can't still be friends at the end of the conversation. Yeah. Because to me, the friendship is more valuable than the money.
Yes, 100%.
And you may lose opportunities like that, but I promise you, if you maintain that type of integrity, everyone in the industry is going to know who you are. Yeah. And they're going to love you, and they're going to respect you, and they're going to trust you. And if you have trust in this industry, like, you will go, like, there is no door that I can't knock on. Yeah. There is nobody I can't talk to right now and just be like, hey, if I have the right move, they're going to be on board with it. Yeah. Like, I mentioned Fat Joe all the way to, like, Killer Priest. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, to Cool Nuts, to you, like we're all in the game. And the thing about it is you got to make sure you look at this business as a game. Yeah. I'll end it with this, like, because I hear a lot of cats in the game, especially the new ones. They're like, this ain't a game, this is my life. Mm-hmm. Well, then you're getting played. You know what I'm saying? Because this shit is not real life. Yeah. This shit is a business. Yeah. And this is for, if you're gonna play the business game, then you gotta look at it as that and not get taken, because you're gonna get taken advantage of if this is everything in your life. Yeah. Someone like me will come along, and if I wanted to have, like, nefarious motives, I'm gonna take full advantage of you, easy and quick, because you don't know what you're talking about. But if this business is a way and a means to get your message out, and you have something to say, and you have something that you're about, and you have a community that you're trying to help, or whatever it is, like a family, however small it may come down to, that is gonna be the loudest voice in your arsenal. And people are going to love you for it. And I would just, like, if I had any suggestion for any cat coming up, it would be, like, be about, like, love first and know who you are, because this game is not going to define me. Right. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to define how I play the game. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to play by my own rules. And if you make some rules I don't like, then I'm just going to go, I'm going to make my own, like, if you're playing Candyline, I'm going to go play chess over here. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, that's just how I look at it.
That's what's up, man. The homie Big Wyno. I appreciate it, bro. I appreciate, like I said, your heart and the things that you do, even outside of music. I appreciate how you use your platforms. And this is a dope conversation, and I hope that it hits home with some folk. And you know, again, no hate. You know, get your money. You know, do what you need to do.
Absolutely.
Don't get me wrong. If somebody comes at me and they says that they want to sponsor the Klyph Notes podcast, I'd definitely be open to listen.
They should.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, like you said, it all comes down to integrity. It all comes down to, you know, what's really important and what is our purpose. So big ups to you, man.
Absolutely.
Speaking of sponsors, I got to give a shout out to Akepele Apparel, man. They have been rocking with us for quite some time now. And just dope gear. I'm rocking the Portland tee right now. They have some new gear up on the site right now. You can check them out at akepele.com. That's AKEPELE.com. Fresh merch, especially for the summertime. We finally got summer up here in the Northwest. Dope tees, just a bunch of dope gear. So check them out. Akepele Apparel, AKEPELE.com. Check them out all over social media as well. The homie DJ Renzo. Yeah, man. And then of course XRAY FM for their continued support of the Klyph Notes podcast. Definitely want to show them love as well. before we go, bro, one more time, I just want to point out that Rated Ill has merch. So if people are trying to get their hands on some merch, what's the move?
Yeah, it's ratedillrecords.com. So you can get a hold of us at ratedillrecords.com. If you need to get a hold of me, you can Big Wyno, like at Big Wyno everything, BIGWYNO, and I'm available. Like you know how Star Child was like having that conversation. Don't be afraid to come talk to me. I love you guys. I love everyone who's out there pushing. And I'm here. I'm here for the scene. I'm here for the community. We're in here, you know?
That's what's up. I also wanted to say, B, like I said, hopefully I said it a couple times, man, you have been so solid, like without asking, in terms of promoting everything that I do, whether it be the radio show, obviously the podcast. You hit me up with the dope art piece that just out of nowhere that was so fresh. Like so honored to have that Wyno piece now that that I'm using for things. I'm real grateful to have you in my circle, bro.
Yeah.
And it's not it's not always the case where people will bless you with stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe in giving people their flowers while they're alive to smell them.
Yeah.
So I'm giving you your flowers and saying thank you, Cat, for real.
Hey, it's seriously my pleasure. Honestly, I love it. I'm glad that I'm even in your guys' circle. It feels amazing.
That's what's up, man. The homie Big Wyno, Rated Ill Records, man. Check them out. Continue to support good people doing good things, man. Gave some shout outs, but I would be remiss if I didn't, of course, give a shout out to my homie Theory Hazit, who created the official theme song for the Klyph Notes podcast.
Super shout out to Theory Hazit.
That's fam right there, man. For real. Remember, the Klyph Notes podcast is available everywhere you listen to your podcast: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. It's also available at klyphnotes.com. If you want to reach out and hit me up, you can check me out on at Gmail. It's klyphnotes@gmail.com, KLYPH notes@gmail.com. You can check me out all over social media at DJ Klyph, at DJ KLYPH. Yeah, man, thank y'all so much for tuning in. Spread the word. Let people know about the podcast. I think this is like our 103rd or 104th episode, which is really, really dope. It's an honor and a blessing to have been able to do it this long. All right, y'all. Until we have an opportunity to do this again, y'all be blessed. Peace.